On the drive I took alone up the East Coast, I began to think about my grandfather. At 80 years young, he has a purple heart, an undying passion to travel, and stories of a colorful past. As a kid, visits to my grandparents' house always included many nights of long family dinners, which were often laced with stories of my family's past lives in Germany and Turkey. After my grandmother and father died, the stories around the table slowly began to fade. We had lost story keepers. Over time, the older I got, the family stories became more and more important to me. It was a mixture of curiosity and searching for identity. It was a lens into knowing a father I had lost and understanding the family in which I come from. On that drive up the East Coast, I began thinking about the stories my grandfather keeps and the obvious importance to document them. Can you talk a little bit about your first recollections or your first memories?
I can remember going there, and when I walked through, I always asked for an eggie, and that was sort of a title that we used all through her life. And when she died, I was with my father, and she had been waiting for me to get to her bedside. And she had been holding on, and when I walked through the door, all she said was "Eggie," and then she closed her eyes and died.
Most of us are young when our grandparents die. It's usually our first experience with death. So often pictures are the only things keeping us tied to our past. I've always loved looking at pictures of my grandparents and aunts and uncles when they were kids. It's innocent and vulnerable. It's a reminder of how much has really changed in their lifetimes.
When I was born and a little boy, the United States was just coming out, hadn't completely come out of the Great Depression. There was no internet. There was no interstate. In fact, there were no divided highways. There were 2-lane highways to get from Baltimore to Washington. And in some cases, there weren't even paved roads. When we went to Germany, of course, we went from New York to Ireland on a prop plane. And because there weren't that many jets then. The first airplane that I ever got on was a jet when we were on the tour in 1961, and we did a tour through the Soviet Union and every place, and I flew from Moscow to St. Petersburg to Leningrad and back again on a Soviet jet plane, and that was the first jet plane I'd ever been on.
Walking into my grandfather's house, you'll notice a hallway that's spotted with framed pictures and various honorable military awards from his time serving in Korea, Germany, and Vietnam.
This was a rifle. I was on one of the trips that we were on was a insertion of troops on the river, and we used a Vietnamese vessel to go down the river, and then they all went in. Well, I couldn't see what was going on, so I climbed up on the mast of the ship, and there was a thing that looked like a great big Budweiser can, and I got in a Budweiser can so I could see my people, and they shot me. That's how I got the Purple Heart. The advisors that I had killed the guy that shot me. While I was in Vietnam is when they came out with the cooler cups. You know, you put a beer can in the thing. Well, I didn't know what the hell they were, so I tried pouring beer into the thing. It all came out the bottom. But I mean,
I saw everybody with them, and I like that. Oh shit! And one of the guys he was a color geek guy, and he said, "Dick, that's not the way you do it. You put it on like this." I said, "Oh," but that was something that happened while I was gone.
Yeah.
This is a crazy Air Force guy. He was getting ready to go home, so he wanted to have a tan. He was from Southern California. This is the Saigon River, and right around the corner here is where Tu and I swam home.
Oh, wow, yeah.
I'm never really surprised by my grandfather's stories anymore. Instead, I am proud. I am proud to share his last name and thankful to have the opportunity to sit and listen.
And we were out on the way to the Michelin plantation, and it was lots of. They hadn't hit it with Agent Orange, so a lot of foliation, and you had triple canopy jungle. So you had one, and then another one, and then another one, and it was thick. And we were going along, and all of a sudden, I felt something, and I looked, and there was a snake. And of course, at the time, I thought he was probably 40 feet long and weighed 10,000 pounds, but anyway. And this kid, he carried a machete, and he just took a machete, and chunk, no head.
Wow.
My grandparents were married for 54 years. They married on May 6, 1956, and only a short 40 days later, my grandfather left for Korea. For the next 16 months, they wrote letters.
Grandma was much better at writing letters than I was, and she would write letters at least twice to 3 times a week, and I tried to get them out once a week and maybe every other week. But she was always a prolific communicator. And as you know, this was 1956, and way back when. And Playboy was the thing. So Grandma thought that the deal would be to send me a copy of Playboy every month. So she did. And I was the most popular officer in the area.
My grandfather candidly stated, I have all these life experiences because of Grandma. She took care of the family and everything else while I was away.
When we got to New York, we had a car, we had your father, we had stuff that we had to put on a plane to go to Germany. And I got to the port to turn in the car, and they said, you can't turn the car in unless you're in uniform. Well, my uniforms were all messed up, and I wanted to take those, I wanted to go check in, and then I could get them dry cleaned and everything. It wouldn't work. 30 minutes later, here comes your grandmother and an MP. And he said, are you Lieutenant Clark? And I said, yes. He said, sir, we have to give your wife a disciplinary report. And I said, what for? He said, well, the New York police got her going on a one-way street. She had gotten my uniform. I went and got in my uniform, turned my car in, and the MP handed me a DR, a disciplinary report, to Harriet Clark, and we got on the plane, and she said, well, it won't count. They misspelled my name.
Sometimes I'll walk into an antique store and stumble upon someone's old family pictures, and for the most part, I feel nothing. Sometimes there are those few iconic images that speak to something personal and human within me, but the people in the pictures are still strangers. Yet my own family pictures can evoke some of the deepest sadness, joy, and nostalgia within me. We need the stories behind the pictures to make them come alive. It is important to me to make sure the people in my own family pictures never become strangers to me or to those who will follow after me. I believe it is necessary to preserve pieces of the past, and even more important is to preserve the past in which you come from. Let us always remember to keep our stories close and our story keepers closer.